So I decided to create a channel solely for my astrophotography. And at the moment of recording this, I still have no idea what it's going to be called. But today I'm going to be showcasing my editing process for the Elephant's Trunk Nebula. And quite frankly, this is my favorite editing process so far. Every day over the past 3 months, I've been researching and practicing and just testing out tons of new editing processes for astrophotography. And I'm going to show you how to create truly beautiful astro photos today. And I'm actually going to be including the files in this so you can actually practice along with me with this data so you can get a firm understanding of how this process works. And you'll be able to apply it to your own images as well. And I gotta say, you're going to love it. So these are going to be the 3 images that we're working with today, and I will include these so you can edit along with me. So these are the 3 images that we're going to be working with to create our color image. We've got our H alpha, our S2, and our O3, which are going to be combined into our RGB data. Now, right here, we've got basically, I didn't do a good job setting up the framing for my S2 data, so it's a little bit tilted, but I wanted to keep this actual framing, so we're going to have to do a little bit of trickery here later to fix this, but it's not going to be a major issue. It'll be easy to fix, and you'll be none the wiser, hopefully. But regardless, this data will be available so you can edit along with me. We are using PixInsight because there's just a few processes in here that are going to make life substantially easier. You can actually do all of this in Photoshop, but it's easier to kind of understand what's happening in PixInsight. So we are going to be doing all of our editing right now from the linear state. So that means we have not actually added any permanent stretch. We can actually remove the stretch from all of this. And you can see here, this is what the data looks like before we stretch it out. And we need to assign the H alpha to the green in channel combination is what we're using right now. We want to be using channel combination. We're going to add the S2 to the red and then the O3 to the blue. We're going to hit apply global, and this is going to create our RGB image. Now this is where a little bit of a nice trick comes in. We're going to use the screen transfer function. Now, typically what happens is you've got this little chain here. It's always checked. And that's it's gonna stretch all of your color channels the same. We don't want that. You wanna make sure you uncheck that chain and then you hit the auto stretch. You're gonna nuke it. And this is actually going to allow PixInsight to stretch each channel differently. It'll figure out how to stretch each channel. And we've got our RGB image. Now, obviously, we've got a lot of cyan in here. We got a lot of green. We got to fix this right here, which is a bit of a nightmare. But we're looking pretty good so far. So what we need to do now is actually apply this and take it out of the linear state. So it's going to become a non-linear image. You're going to grab that little triangle. You're going to drop that onto the histogram here, and then drop the histogram onto your image. It's going to get blown out in white. Then you just hit this button here, and it takes it back to normal. So you can actually close all of these now, except for your hydrogen alpha. We're going to do a nice little trick here with our hydrogen alpha data in a little bit, but we're going to start processing this RGB photo here first. So I decided, instead of making this more complicated than it needs to be, to show how to remove this here, we're just going to actually crop this down a little bit, just to get rid of that and make this a little bit easier. So we're using the dynamic crop tool, and we're gonna crop this just to crop that little section out, and then we're gonna drop that onto the H alpha because we need the H alpha to be the same, because that's going to be used for a very important step. So we crop that down, and then we can hit the check mark here, and that'll crop that down. So you can see if we put these on top of each other, they are still lined up, and that is exactly what you want. So you want to make sure to use the dynamic crop tool for that. And then we can start editing this. Now, this is out of the linear state. So what we want to do is, first and foremost, what I like to do is you can invert this image. And what we're going to do is we're going to remove all of this here, because what this does is allows us to use the scnr tool here, which removes green. But when we invert it, it makes all of that magenta turn green. So we can just pull all of that stuff right onto the image right off the bat. Makes it a lot easier than all we do is just invert it again. And it's already going to look substantially better. But what we're going to do here is, in my opinion, one of the most important things when editing an astrophoto. And that's actually removing your stars. It seems really weird, but we're going to remove the stars right now. You can do it later, but if you do it at a later step, it actually is going to kind of create some issues where it won't remove the stars very well. So we're going to just go ahead and run the star net right now. It's going to take a while. All right, so our stars are now removed. But the removal process isn't always great. It leaves a little bit of artifacts. So you don't have to do this, but I really like to. I brought it into Photoshop, and we're just going to heal some of these spots with the spot healing tool. And this whole thing is actually going to be blurred out in the future anyways. So at this point in time, just spend a little bit of time fixing up some of these blemishes that were created by the star removal process. You can spend as much or as little time on this as you want. Obviously, the more time you spend on this without actually like ruining any of the data in the image, the better. But it's going to be completely up to you with how much time you want to spend. I do want to mention that you need to save this image as a TIFF to be able to open it up in this particular program. And if you don't know exactly what you need to do for that, you can go back to PixInsight, you do File, Save As, and then just save it as a TIFF. Now, when you save it as a TIFF, you want to make sure that you put it as 16-bit unsigned integer. If you do it on any of the other ones, it's not going to show up right. So make sure you use 16-bit. You don't need to change any of the other things, and you'll just click OK. Now, when you're healing these spots, you do want to make sure that you're not really accidentally deleting any of this nebulosity. We are going to be completely blurring this image, but this right here, this is actually still a star, so that's safe to go. But otherwise, the image looks pretty clean. There's like this blue spot here that's not supposed to be there. That was leftovers from a star. And then we look pretty good here. We're going to get rid of some of these last few spots. And then we're going to save this image and then open this version up in PixInsight. We're going to go to Save. We're going to go back to PixInsights. We can actually close that now. We're going to go to our image. Drag and drop. And there we go. We've got it all nice and cleaned up, and we are ready to move on. So this is where we're going to start selecting colors and removing or kind of adjusting the colors. We want to pull that green bias out of this image. So we need to go to Color Mask, and we're going to select green. Now what I like to do, I'm not going to change any of these, but the mask blur, I'm going to set to 4. This makes it so that you're kind of adjusting a gradient rather than the pixels themselves, which works a lot better. We can go ahead and minimize that one. You can rename it to green, but it does have the CMG at the end, so you always know that's going to be green because it'll have the G at the end. Now we're going to do another color mask. We're going to do cyan on this one. We're going to set it to 4 again. That'll run real quick. Well, relatively quickly. Now it blurs it out, so that way we don't get that hard. You can still see some of these stars that I didn't basically heal up with the heal tool, but it should be okay. That's why you kind of want to spend a little bit more time, especially if you're working on like your own photo and you want it to be as high quality as possible, but it's not going to be too much of an issue. Now we're going to do one more color mask. We're going to do yellow. We're going to set the blend mode to 4 for this one as well. And this is going to allow us to adjust 3 zones and create a really, really nice image and bring out some of the highlights. It's going to look really nice. So first and foremost, we want to go ahead and apply our mask here. So we're going to drop our mask onto here, and you can see everything turns this red. What you can do is actually just hit Control-K or just remove the mask. We're going to go to Process, and Curves Transformation is what we want. I, for some reason, always have a hard time finding it in there, but Curves Transformation. There we go. So you can close all these other windows or just kind of minimize them if you want, but I keep them up because I'm crazy. But you're going to hit Preview here, so that way you can actually see what you're doing, and you're going to select green. Now we're going to start pulling the green out, and you can see if we boost it, it's going to get super green, and if we lower it, we start getting this red. Now the goal here, we really want to get like a goldish color. We don't want it to be red, but we don't want it to be too green either. So what I like doing is we're going to do green like that. We're going to pull the blue down a little bit so we get more of that golden glow. Then we're going to boost the reds. Now it's going to show up a little bit more red than we want right now, but we're going to fix that in Photoshop later. Now we can also click the C here, and I like to do just a bit of a boost there. And then for the luminance, which is the L, we're going to boost that a tad too. And then since we pulled the green and the blue out, that kind of reduced our saturation a little bit. So we're going to click on RGB, and we're going to just boost all of... Oh my god, not that much. Definitely not that much. So we got to delete that point. There we go. Just give it a little bit of a boost. And now you can kind of unclick and re-click, and you can see how much it's changed already. Looking pretty good so far. We're going to apply that to the image. I usually like to do the green removal process twice. We're going to go back to our greens. We're going to pull it out a little bit. Whoops. Hit preview. We're going to pull it out a little bit more. Now, it's really going to be a personal preference on how much you remove the greens. Some people are going to want to keep a little bit of the green so you get that rainbow effect. But we're still going to get the rainbow effect here in a minute when we adjust our yellow. And boost the reds just a... we don't really need to boost the reds that much. I think that's looking good. Now we can drag that onto here. So this is kind of like the basics of our color transformations. We're going to apply the cyan mask now. And then you got to make sure you reset this. Hit your preview button. And we're going to boost our blues a little bit. You can see how that's boosting here. You don't want to go too much because it's going to get a little too crazy. Although I do like the look of having that purple in there. We're not going for that style right now. You could if you wanted to, though. You absolutely could. We're going to pull the greens out a little bit. And then we can mess around with maybe boosting the reds, but we're not going to do that. We might actually pull the reds out a tiny bit. And we're going to go to the C. We're going to boost that a tiny bit. The S here is for saturation. We want to get a little bit of that in there because it brightens it up. And you click on your luminance. Get a little bit of luminance in there. And we can pull it down a tad at the bottom. Like a very, very slight S curve. We're going to do that on RGB too. It looks a little crazy at the moment. But we removed more of the green. We boosted the blues. And it's looking pretty good. We got a little bit more magenta in here than I would typically like. But you know what? I am going to be okay with that. Because it's going to look really nice when we finish our process in a little bit. And you can spend as much time as you want actually fidgeting with each of these color channels. I'm kind of just showing a quick rundown of how this works. Typically, I would spend a lot more time fine-tuning it, but I really just wanted to showcase the process today. Now, we applied our yellow mask, and the yellow mask we can do a couple things with. We really want to get a different color in the highlights there. We want more of the goldish color. We need to boost the blue a tad, and then we need to remove the greens. No, we don't need to remove the greens. You can boost the greens a tad in here, and that way we get red, gold, and blue, which is what I really, really like. And then we got a little bit of that purple in there too, but it's going to look really nice here in a little bit. So we can boost the luminance on this a tad, just so it gives it that depth. We're really adjusting the edges of this nebulosity. See, if we bring that out crazy, you can see really what we're adjusting here. And this is where you're going to start pulling out a lot of depth in your photo. And I think this particular color channel is a lot that people don't typically edit, but it can add very subtle detail to your image. I think it's very, very important. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. We can adjust this one here a little bit, but it's not going to do much for us. We don't want to blow it out too much, so we're actually not going to do that. And there we go. Plop that on here, and we'll see our highlights change color a little bit, and it looks really nice. Now, this is where things are going to get crazy, and you're going to be like, wait, where's our stars? I want stars. I want this thing to look beautiful. It looks funky right now. It looks all washed out. It's noisy. And now we're going to do something even crazier, okay? It's gonna get funky, and you're going to be like, what the hell is he doing? I don't like noise in my image. And astrophotography is plagued with noise. I'm going to show you how to get rid of that right now. And once you see how this works, you're going to love me. I promise. So we're going to actually use the convolution tool. And we're going to set it to like 7 or 8, depending on how much noise you have. I usually do about 7 on this. Let's see how 7 looks. It's going to completely blur our RGB layer. It helps if you remove your mask first. So I'm going to Control Z that. And I'm going to remove my mask. And then we're going to apply it. And there we go. We got a nice blur all the way across our image. We could probably go a little bit heavier with it. We could maybe go with an 8. Let's see how that looks. So we can... Kind of this one, you're just going to play it by ear, really. Or ear? By eye? Play it by eye. Yeah, I think we'll go with an 8. That reduces the noise in the image quite a bit. So we're going to leave that there for right now. Now what we want to do is we want to process our H-alpha data. Now the reason we're processing our H-alpha data is because this is the channel where the stars look the best. This gives us the most detail, the least amount of noise. This is going to be the one that we focus all of our editing on. You can go as crazy as you want with this, but I'm going to use a specific script right now, which is the Easy Processing Suite. This makes life so much easier. Now, I will leave a link to the Easy Processing Suite so you can add it to your PixInsight, and it updates very often. But we're going to go ahead and run the Easy Decon. This is going to take a little bit of time. Make sure you select your H-alpha file, and we're going to create the raw process star mask. Now, if you don't want to download the Easy Processing Suite, you actually don't need to do any of this. It's very subtle what we're doing right now, but it does help the image overall in the end. But at the end of the day, you can skip ahead until we're done with the Easy Processing Suite if you don't want to download it, because you don't actually need it. But we're going to create the process star mask. It's going to take like 10 minutes. So it's about to finish with our star mask. And once that's done, we're going to create a background mask, which should only take a second depending on your computer. And then once that's done, we go to deconvolution and generate our PSF, which is going to basically create a star profile for us. And that shouldn't take very long. Maybe? Did we do it? There it is. All right, perfect. Now, you can adjust all of these things down here, but I often don't find that I need to do that. It all pretty much runs easily. That's why it's called the Easy Processing Suite. And we're going to go ahead and run this deconvolution. It's going to be subtle, but it'll help the final image. Once that deconvolution is done running, you can just delete all the extra little files that it made. The Easy Processing Suite will often make tons of different files. Now, there's one more that I like to run. Now, we could... Actually, there's 2 more that I sometimes like to run. We could run the denoise, but honestly, I think it blurs out the image a little bit too much, and I have other ways that I like to do that. What I do like to do, however, is to do the soft stretch. We're going to take it out of the linear state right now, and we're going to select our HA image. And the reason we're doing the soft stretch is because this is going to be our luminance file. We're going to combine this file eventually with the RGB image, and we don't want it to be super duper bright anyways. So this is gonna, this soft stretch is really gonna help us. Now we're gonna run the Easy HDR, and we're gonna select that. Just run that real quick. And this is basically gonna brighten up our stuff, brighten up the highlights a little bit, and darken the darks a little bit. Just very subtly. It helps pull out a little bit of the details too. We can close all those. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to pull this into Photoshop. There's one more thing that we could do, and that is run a star reduction on here, which I think looks really good. You know, let's go ahead and do that. It takes a little bit of time because we have to create another star mask, which, since these photos are over 100 megabytes apiece, it takes a while. So let's go ahead and just create star mask for reduction, and we'll be back in a second. Okay, we finally got our star mask. It's going to automatically select it. I'm going to leave everything normal. We're just going to run the easy star reduction, and I'll show the difference here after, because it's going to take a little bit of time to run the star reduction. Actually, it's almost done. There we go. So we can just make sure that it didn't leave any like black halos around our stars. But if you use the settings that it recommends, usually isn't any issue. So what we can do is we can actually hit Control Z. There you go. So you can see the stars start popping out again, and then Control Y. So it just makes the stars more subtle, and I think it's going to make the final image look a lot better. It basically helps make your stars look like they're more in focus and not like overexposed. I really like the way it looks. So now we're going to save this. I'm going to save this as a TIFF. We're going to bring this into Photoshop. I like to save this as stars. Now, once again, when you save as a TIFF, you need to make sure you set it as 16-bit. Very important that you save it as 16-bit. And then we'll go back into Photoshop. Grab this bad boy. And this is where I like doing all of my denoise and everything. The photo itself already looks pretty darn good. But we're going to do a couple things in here with the camera raw filter that's really going to put this over the edge. Now we can do a tiny bit of noise reduction here. This H-alpha image has almost 100 files in it that are all been dithered, so the noise is already pretty reduced. Now, I like to do dehaze. There we go. Just dehazing it kind of gets some of that background glow out, and it really, really helps your photos pop. So I like to do it a little bit heavier on the H-alpha image because we're going to be layering that other image on top of it. So we need to make sure that we do it enough to where it still brings out the quality when we layer that blur layer on top of it. Then I do a little bit of clarity, and you can do texture too, but if you do texture, it sharpens the stars a little too much and makes it unpleasing to the eye. So for this one, I think I might just do about 3. And you can uncheck this and recheck it, and you can see how much it has brought out the details in this image. It's removed all of that background glow. It's brought out all the details in the nebulosity. It's sharpened it up quite a bit. We might have gone a little too much with the dehaze. There we go. We'll bring it down a little bit. And just kind of toggle this back and forth and get it to a point that's pleasing to your eye. Once you've got it there, just go ahead and hit OK. And we're pretty much good to go now. So we could do more to it, but I think I'm pretty happy with that. So we're just going to save this bad boy. We're going to go back into PixInsight. We can close this one. Actually, we're not going to close that one yet. We'll minimize this one. We'll put it up here. We'll bring our stars in. And this is where we're going to get our color image with the stars. So we're going to go to Process. And then LRGB combination is what we want. Now you uncheck RGB because we already did that. You're going to drag your stars onto the luminance section of this. And then you're going to drag this on top of the RGB image. And it's going to merge these two. And there we go. We've got all of our stars and our color into the image. And this is what we're going to work with now. You're going to go ahead and File, Save As. Now, you can name this as whatever you want, but I'm just going to name it RGB2. Make sure it's a TIFF. 16-bit. Hit OK. And we're going to bring this back into Photoshop. We're not going to use PixInsight anymore. Now, you can, if you don't own PixInsight, I should have mentioned this way earlier, you can get a free trial for 45 days to try it out for yourself. You can already see in here, we've got very to almost no noise in this image. You can denoise it a little bit more if you want, but this is where we're going to get our final stuff going here. So we're going to be doing a bunch of adjustments, mainly levels. So we want to brighten our image back up a little bit. Don't do the midtones too much. We want to brighten up the highlights. So make sure your midtones, don't clip off any of this data on the midtones. You can just boost your, this would be considered like the highlights a little bit. And then we're going to do hue and saturation. We're going to turn those that red into the gold that we want. And it's going to also change the color of the blues a little bit. We don't want to do it too much. There we go. And then we're going to do curves. We're going to bring up the midtones a tad. We're going to drop the darks a little bit. And you can kind of mess with this as much as you want. And we're going to boost the vibrance. This is going to get our colors into the image a lot better. So there we go. Don't do it too much, and you can do the saturation a tad. But if you do the saturation too much, it's going to blow out the image. Let's go ahead and merge the visible right now. Now, we also want to do our rotation. So I always forget how to do this. It's in here somewhere. Image adjustments. Is it rotation? Under image rotation. I think we want to do counterclockwise. Nope. We want to do clockwise. There we go. That way we get it into the framing that we want, so we can kind of work with it the way we know we want it to look. So we still need to bring out some more of the details in here without blowing anything out. So we're going to boost this a little bit. We kind of do this in iterations. We just got to make sure that when we do this, we don't blow out any of the data. So now we need to do the color balances. This is where we kind of really start fine-tuning it. And sometimes you'll make it look a little wonky, but as you go down the list here, you'll be able to really hone in on the proper colors for this. And this is where you can get the colors in the background removed properly. You're going to do midtones, shadows, and highlights. So if your shadows are looking too blue, then you boost the reds and the shadows. And then you can boost the greens a tad. And then you're going to bring the yellows, the yellow and blue one down to yellow a little bit. And then once you do that, you can kind of adjust them from here to the way that you want them to be. And then when you go to midtones, just adjust those a little bit. And this is kind of where you want to spend a lot of time really getting the colors right. So we're going to bring the highlights down into the cyans a little bit more. And then we can go a little... No, we don't want to go magenta. We're going to boost the magenta into the green. And I think we'll boost the blues and the highlights a little bit. At least this first time. Because we're going to do this a few times. And we'll do our curves again, because our image is getting a little too dark. We'll bring down the shadows a little bit. So every time we adjust the colors, we're going to adjust our curves too. So we're going to do a little bit of contrast here. Do a little bit of brightness to brighten up the image a tad. You can see that. And then we're going to go back into our color bounds. We'll do midtones again. And if we bring this to the cyans, it gives us a little bit of a more natural blue color. But then we need to bring down the magenta to get our clouds here. You can also do masks in this if you want, which will help out quite a bit too. So if we wanted to, if we really just wanted to edit the nebulosity, like the blues in this, we could invert our mask by hitting Control-I on it, and we could kind of just paint in where we want it to change. So if we want to... Whoops. I don't know where that just got pulled from. We can just paint in the area that we want the color to change in. And if we uncheck that and recheck it, you can see we got a little bit darker and a little bit redder in there. That's not really what we wanted though, so just wanted to showcase that real quick. We'll go back into the shadows here. And our shadows are a little blue. We want to pull that out and make it more yellow. We boosted the reds, we brought it down into the yellows, and then we can kind of adjust. This middle one doesn't actually need to be adjusted really at all. There we go. Now that's looking a lot better in our shadows. We want to make sure we don't get any green tints to it. Now it has darkened the image up quite a bit. We also need to go into highlights. And this is where we're going to get very very subtle changes in our image. And it's going to be kind of dependent on your own personal taste, how far you go with it. Gonna boost that a little bit. We can do curves again, which we actually might want to reduce, do a reverse curve on this one a little bit actually. Like that. We can probably boost the highlights a tad. There we go. And we're pretty much where we want to be with this. You can kind of adjust the slider a little bit and see if doing any of that will help the image at all, but pretty much just using the color balance will help out a lot. So we're going to go ahead and merge the visible again, and we're going to do camera raw filter. And in here, we can do some more fine tuning with the lights. If you want to boost your highlights a little bit, you can. You can reduce your shadows or boost them if you want more detail in the shadows, which on certain images will look really good. You can reduce your whites, which is going to kind of... because during this process, you probably blew out your stars a little bit. You can reduce the whites to fix that a tad. And you can adjust your darks here as well. If you kind of went a little too much with the curves or levels, you can bring back some of the detail in the darks. Then you do a little bit of dehaze, a little bit of clarity. Now you can actually reduce the texture if you want to kind of make it feel a little bit more painting, or if you sharpened your stars a little too much, you can pull the texture out a little bit, which helps. Then a little bit of a boost to your saturation and vibrance. Then you go into detail. We're going to do a little bit of noise reduction and a little bit of color noise reduction. We don't want to do too much. Keep the detail and everything. If you boost sharpening, you can do that, but it's going to add artifacts to your image. It does look good, but I don't think you really need to do it. You can see deep in here that it's adding extra noise to your image, and you're not gaining a lot of anything else. So I don't like doing that. We're going to go ahead and run and save that. And from here, it's really going to be personal preference how much farther you go with it. But I'm really, really happy. You can do a little bit more denoising. You can do a little bit more color adjustments. But all in all, looking like a really good image. So I'm really happy with the quality of this image so far. We've removed all of the typical color noise you get from SHO combination. Our stars don't have any of those funky halos. But you can see where we kind of didn't do the proper healing of the star removal, so you might get a little bit of these halos around them, but they're not nearly as bad as the typical halos that you will get in your everyday SHO image. And I do hope this helped some of you create better astro photos. Let me know what you think of the editing process in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one.